Okay.
Just everyone doing.
How are you?
Let's see.
So you're like, who was in
No, I
here
have
last? Well, we own it.
Yeah.
But
Volumes are sensitive. We'll do introductions so that you can meet everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we'll officially call the meeting to order, and we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm Georgette Stephens. I'm the chair of the audit committee.
I'm Al Michaels, I'm the CFO.
John Cone, CPA, Cusack & Company.
Dave Cadera, IDA board member.
Victoria Stores, IDA board member, committee member, and chair of the IDA.
Hi, Kate Hedgeman, Executive Director and Counsel.
Hi, Dick Cullo, I'm a board member. I'm the treasurer, but I'm not a member of the audit committee.
All right. Nice to meet everyone.
So we officially have a quorum. In the packet, everyone received a copy of the minutes from the February 10th, 2022 audit committee meeting. Were there any suggested edits or changes? Okay, so seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I'll note that I wasn't on the audit committee at the time,
Yeah.
but I've read the minutes thoroughly and feel comfortable agreeing with Dave.
Okay. And so for new business, we have to review the 2022 audited financial statements. Kate sent them out to everyone. I had an opportunity to speak with John yesterday and we sort of went through it. It really isn't anything major of note. No journal entries, which that is amazing. I wish my audit came out like that. And we just talked about a few things, but really nothing of note, but I'll turn it over to John if he wants to go through
Yeah, sure.
any of the highlights.
Yeah, we spoke on the phone the other day, just kind of going through the overview of the audit process. One of the things, this audit's done relatively soon, especially since your year end is just after December 31st. I think we came in probably the second week of January to Al's office and performed what we needed to do in order to get these drafts out to you on time. There's two phases in the audit. There's the internal control piece. So what we do is we send Al an engagement package, if you will. Has our engagement letter, has all the internal control process memos, who does what, cash receipt, cash disbursement process, credit card process, IT controls. Just wanted to make sure there's no major changes in the internal control process. We did an internal control study, I think, back in 2013, I think it was. And, it was there where, we recommended certain segregation of duties to be in place just so that, it would pretty much mitigate any kind of risk. Obviously, back then, Tom Connolly was technically an employee, I guess, of the town, but he was, here as under contract, as is, Kate is now. And, we just didn't want one person doing everything. Al's the CFO, he's got access to the books, access to the checks, does all the bank reconciliations. So it's here, we do a ton of nonprofits that are small as well. And one of the things we recommend is getting the board involved. So, in this case, we have a board member that would review the bank statement reconciliations, cancel checks for unusual activity. Lucky for the IDA, there's not, you're not recording 100 transactions a month or anything like that. So, you can literally go through, everything and just making sure everything is good to go. No big deal. We always look for the initials and dates on the statements. So whether it be a credit card statement, collateral statement, bank statement, just indicating that a proper review or approval, more or less, hasn't been performed.
I usually do that, but I don't initial it and send it back because I'm doing the document retention. So you want me to?
If you wanted, in that, especially in this remote world too, you can always send an email.
Okay.
And then what we would suggest is printing an email and attaching that to the filed copy of the bank statement and the reconciliation. So everything would the reconciliation, the bank statement, and an email from whoever's reviewing or approving, that email will get printed and attached, and that's your proof right there.
Okay, because Al sends me the key bank stuff and I send the other, the collateralization statements to both of them.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it is going on, but there's no record probably.
I guess maybe I assume when you send it to me, you've approved it.
Right, yeah, that's
Okay, you
exactly
wouldn't
what.
send it to me if you,
Right. I'm just sending it for internal controls purposes,
Yeah,
like,
right.
like, and so that you have it in the finance records as well.
Yeah, I mean, so if that isn't being done, starting now, for the next month, if you reconcile February, for example, you can start it then.
Okay,
And what I do too is when I reconcile, I send the bank statement and then all the separate check images
Yeah.
that are found on that statement, so that, there's a check for some odd amount. that
Yep.
You're not used to. Well, look at the check and you see why that odd amount is.
Yeah, so that's, the whole process. Obviously, we don't think Gal's gonna, take a check and run down to Florida anytime soon, but you always want to have
I
those.
tried that last time.
You always want to have those controls in place. Again, I got to come in, from an outside third party looking in. So it's just making sure you're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. So obviously, we haven't had any internal control findings, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, we call them. Those are things like if you had a finding that is so major, they would qualify as a separate letter. So you only have 2 letters, and actually, I think everything's included in here, the one report. Sometimes we issue 2 separate letters, but there would be a separate letter that would be included in here if there was a major finding, and obviously there's not. And so that's the first part of the audit. Second part of the audit, we have to verify the numbers as of December 31st. We confirm your bank accounts with outside financial institutions. So Al gives me a bank statement. I got to make sure that what he's given me is not a doctored up copy of some sort. We actually get the verification from the bank directly too. There's we test receivables, payables, accrues, everything that's pretty much on the balance sheet. We have to test numerous transactions that are over our scope. Revenues and expenses as well. Obviously, you guys had 3 major revenue streams, new revenue streams this year. We took a close look at those, make sure that the revenue recognition was in place and good to go. No adjustments were necessary. And we do the same thing on expenses. If we see anything that's over our scope expense-wise, we generally tend to ask for the invoice and make sure that the internal controls are applied properly to those as well. So
Just as long as you mentioned that, and it might be that I'm just not abreast to them. On the port transaction, I had thought, and probably incorrectly, that the port transaction for RevRec, that we would accrue the whole fee and amortize it over the 24-month construction period. It was a little different than the other. It's a short window, and that was just my thought, that's how that would be handled, but I guess it wasn't.
yeah, it's really when with something like this, we're almost treating it as like an exchange type transaction.
Mm-hmm.
That new ASU came out a few years ago, and you can treat it as I think it's called ASC 606, or the other one is using a kind of like a foundation type grant, let's say, where they're going to give you $100,000, but 50,000 they're going to get this year, 50,000 is next year. You still book that whole 100,000 as revenue
Right.
in the period that you got it. Here, there's things to be done in order to obtain that money. There's a right of return. There's milestones, barriers. So we would treat that port transaction as an exchange type transaction. So when the services get performed, that's when you get your money, and that's when it's going to be recognized as revenue.
My only thought process was the genesis because it's so different. It's different from all of our other transactions.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't extend past the construction period. But that's all right. In 2 years, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. You know, and, you know, I was going through whether we recognized too much in 2022 or too little, but I guess it doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, it'll give you, you know, it's proper, it's GAAP, and it's,
Okay.
you know, you will have, you know, showing some profits in 23 and 24 now, you know, because of the way that the.
Mhm, I understand.
So
I'm okay with it. I just want to make sure it was blessed.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I get, you know, great year comparing 21 to 22. I mean, $10,000 profit in 21 to 800,000 in 22 is pretty,
Must be our new chair.
pretty nice.
Part of that too is.
Oh, yeah, it's all me.
The cooperation with the county on a couple of projects that because they overlap towns, the county IDA was blessed with doing it, but you know, our agency and the town really helped out, like particularly with the plug power. I think that thing happened with speed that I've never seen in my life.
Yes, we'll finish before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's wonderful.
And even, you know, supplemental fees from PSEG.
Yeah.
was Pretty much doubled this year.
Every time she sends me the quarterly thing, I go, ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
That's, I believe though, the footnote, I'm just wondering, it says that it's going to expire, and I thought it expires in June of 24. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and then footnote said 23, right?
Yeah, so in our MDA, it says the
Oh, MDN.
PSEG are subject to fluctuations in the market factors will terminate in 2023. I think it's 24, but the original agreement predates me, but I think I saw something that referenced that it ends halfway through 24.
Who would be able to.
Wow.
Any contract to verify.
Yeah, let me find in my files.
And then, you know, the only other thing that Catherine kind of brought to my attention last night was, you know, the attorney letter was sent not only to Joe Scott, but, you know, one also has to be sent to. So if you want to sign that and send that over there, you know, we can get a.
Sure.
Just because, yeah, and then, you know, because of this, because technically, you know, it's almost like a related party kind of thing where, because you're the executive director here, you know, using the firm, there's just gonna have to be another footnote in here for the whole related party transaction, which is not in the drafts. So.
Okay.
The only.
Well, I'm sorry. You would need that for corporate counsel? I mean, for corporate counsel, it's like, I don't care. I mean,
It's all the same.
It's
corporate counsel, I mean, every organization has.
Yeah.
Corporate counsel, I don't remember seeing a related party.
You know what, let me bring that to Ken Claflin's
Yeah.
director of our government and nonprofit. I can bounce it off
I also think that maybe
just to see.
you could probably eliminate a letter just by an inquiry or maybe a modification, you know.
Yeah.
We have no litigation. You can add a line into our rep letter. It's up to you if you want to have a letter going from your letterhead or.
Well, usually with all my clients, you know, nonprofits, public authorities, doesn't matter. I'm usually doing this letter, and when I didn't see it,
No,
you
we
know,
talked
and
about it.
then I
agree.
read Joe Scott's letter, which you know, it's a great lawyer letter. We only represented them on this, this, and this. We don't have any information regarding anything else. I said, oh, wait, you know, they've got to send it to me.
Okay, but you don't need to make a representation based upon transactions, just on litigation. Didn't you?
Well, usually, yeah, and if there's any
It's
what?
outstanding invoices at the end of the year.
Yeah,
Usually.
Right, yeah, it's just really for us to confirm that there's no outstanding pending litigation that,
Yeah.
you know, that we would need to record as a, you know, potential footnote or even an accrual,
Mhm.
you know, if there is a settlement, you know, that we know about before the, you know, because these reports aren't dated yet, they're still in drafts. So
That's
once
why I
they're-
haven't signed it up.
Yeah, that's why once they're approved by the board, you know, that's
Sign
when,
it today.
you can sign it today.
If today's the date we use.
Yeah, you can use, I mean, that's
It'll have to
absolutely
be
today.
a
would
board
be the
meeting,
date.
right?
No,
If you have an audit committee, you can actually.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah,
can do it from
yeah.
there.
so I'll sign it
By
today.
the way, it is 23, so.
It is 23?
I thought
Okay.
so.
My memory is great.
But I don't know why
I've been looking at this thing for 12
you would use a letter. I think it's up to you. I mean,
I
It's
was hoping for more.
because Joe Scott is special counsel. He
Mhm.
can't really, he wouldn't get litigation. It wouldn't come to him. So he clearly says in his letter, I have no knowledge outside of whatever. But it's standard, like I get them from.
that's fine. I would,
Do they get, so Joe Scott would technically still get a letter though, right?
Yes.
Some people, some clients, they're, especially like my smaller nonprofits, they'll mention, they're voluntary, we never, or not voluntary, but, if we haven't used them all year, or if it's, they charge only $100 for a small thing, then they're gonna charge us for the letter,
right.
to write the letter. So that's why I didn't know, if Joe Scott should get a letter. But
Yeah.
it seems like he does, he should get a letter. So it'll be 2 letters next year.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah, and
It's up
that's
to you. There's no
usually what he'll
litigation.
do is a limited letter as to his representation. We
Right.
share a couple clients, that's the reason why I know.
Yeah, okay.
The one comment that I had, just wondering what people thought, on page 11, there's a note about net position, and it talks about the board agreeing to keep roughly 2 times the annual base expense budget of $300,000. I wondered if we might want to put that as a operating reserve specifically in the budget, and so you'll appreciate this. I'll say, once people see how much money you have,
Mhm.
they're like, oh, well, why aren't you, like, the city comes to us all the time saying, well, you have X in reserves, and so we want you to do XYZ project. And so it allows us to, instead of saying we have 1.2, we really only have 800,000 because we've identified this and we've kept it as reserves. And so it doesn't really change our numbers, but it shows us committed funds. And so that if then when we're talking about what projects we might want to do in the town or how we can help with economic development, it shows that we have less money than we really do. So that was just my only comment, if people might be interested in maybe setting that aside as in
We
the audit.
already have.
Oh, it is?
Yep, it's a fund balance, and we have a fund balance policy.
Right, but
So
it's
let's-
not technically, right, like when you see
Like, on
$1.2
page
million.
6, yeah, like on
Yeah,
page 6,
okay.
Under the
Yeah.
net position, you see unrestricted, and then just below that, you see board designated,
Yeah.
something like that, where it's kind of broken out in a way.
I guess what I'm saying is, we've already allocated funds previously to the town for a project. So there was a whole other discussion and committee meeting on that. We haven't had money to give the town, so it hasn't been an issue, but, I don't oppose, if you want to set a reserve, I mean.
Like if you've already basically are saying it in the first footnote that you have. When people see how much money you have in cash reserves, people start looking at it. And we don't want people to think we have 1.2 million. We want them to think we have 800,000 or, 900,000, whatever that is. Just a thought.
I think it's a good thought. I'm hoping the finance committee will meet no later than April. And since we established the fund balance policy, that might be the place to get these reconciled. I don't know, since we don't have it segregated in its own account.
I don't think it
Well,
needs to be.
I'm,
It's just on paper,
And
really.
it's just a reclass between, the 2 accounts here. It wouldn't change anything else besides that position display here. The only thing is, I'm trying to figure out if you can board designate for, it's
We
general
definitely
operations.
do. We
Yeah.
have, at my organization, and we've changed the amount, like each year you can
Yeah.
change it, right? If our dollar amount starts to go low, we verify why we believe that we can go higher or lower and what our thing is. But so we do have it separated. We have a couple different board designated categories in ours.
And one of
One of
just for
them is
general
operating
operating.
reserves,
Okay.
yeah.
We used to be 3 years to 450.
It used to be 450, yeah.
And then we had a little bit of a drought period
yeah,
and, had to step it down to 300. So if we're going to go to these motions, we might back it up to the 450 because we can.
one thing we did do, just, is in the finance committee in our budgeting, we budgeted a support line for the town this year. Okay, for probably almost like a grant to the
Yeah.
town for business development. You know, I'm not, and I don't mind it, but I'm not one to designate board for unspecified reasons. You know, if we need to, if we needed to do some specific project, I would be okay. We have a fund balance policy, which we adhere to. You know, I don't see why we would handcuff ourselves any more than that. I'm not, quite frankly, the town can dictate anything they want to us, right? You know, it's up to us to either go along or they'll replace us.
Well, there's only
Okay.
Oh, dear. What? Oh,
There's,
dear.
there's only very specific
Yeah.
things though that an IDA can even
Right.
fund,
Yeah.
so it's limited. It's a
Mhm.
limited issue for us, I guess, based upon that. There's
Yeah.
only so many
Yeah, I mean,
things
I
we-
just, dealing, like knowing Albany and how often the
Mhm.
city goes to the IDA there, how
Yeah.
often they come to us when they see our fund balance.
Mhm.
It's just
Totally
optics,
different,
right? Like,
yeah.
But we've also not, if I'm understanding you correctly, we've not had money in the past for
No.
people to see us and to come to us. So I just, if we not, I'm okay if we don't do it. I think it's something we need to watch though, because the minute people start recognizing you have money,
Mhm.
they start looking for, or trying to find ways for you to be able to help fund things that, and want you to get creative about how you defend what you funded.
I would go
Just
with
from
George.
experience. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
I have the relationship with the supervisor and the town board around the budget. I was chair of the finance committee until Dick stepped up. Thank goodness. And certainly the supervisor's office and our town controller have been very understanding of the years when we had little to no revenue. I think that Georgette's position has a lot of merit because while they know that we have a minimum fund balance and they know that we have been constrained for a number of years, there are other people who could read this. We all know IDAs have been under scrutiny a whole lot more throughout the state and the town. If we can adjust this for that 300 and have a bottom line that's a little bit lower, I think it could help us make clear to the rest of the town board and other, school districts and other people that we do have this
Okay.
reserve. The board does
We can do-
designate it.
We can go this to the finance, because
Mhm.
we don't need to debate it. But just to, I was, with respect to the bid, the fund, we, as you know, I'll go offline. A lot of what was
Yeah.
done was for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's up to the other members of the audit committee. I think there's merit into reflecting it here in the audit if you want to address it through a more formal process later.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you have time. I mean, the Paris report usually is the last piece, which probably, won't,
Yeah, I've already, most of the Paris report I've got done.
Yeah.
The numbers are on, for the Paris report portion are already filled in. And it would take me long enough to log in and change the net assets from X to Y with moving the other number to temporary.
well, there's a separate for.
Yeah, I think,
designated.
the Paris report, I think that the financial statement kind of mirrors.
Yeah. Because
So, I mean,
it's
we're
still,
talking
and just to be clear too, it's still gonna be considered
equity.
unrestricted.
Right.
It's still
Right.
gonna be falling under that
It's
unrestricted bracket.
unrestricted anyhow.
So it's gonna have net position, and then you'll see the unrestricted other, and then it'll say board designated, and then it'll say total unrestricted net position. So it is just a reclass between the two. It's kind of not to say robbing Peter to pay Peter, but it's because they're both under that unrestricted designation. But visually, I see your point. If somebody was looking at this, they would want to see that, something was there, not just completely unrestricted, and, this is a free-for-all. But again, the IDAs, you do have your policies and
Mhm.
budgets on what you can spend your money on too. But I mean, obviously, you have a very nice cushion right now.
The ABL would take exception if we started spending money that we're not, because the past towns and local locals have done that.
Yeah.
That's been a big issue for the larger ideas.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well,
misspending of funds.
that the municipal government will come towards the idea, so you're sitting on $1 million of cash and the IDA is saying, we'd be happy to help you. Yeah, it's just sitting here. We can't use it because we don't have $1 million worth of expenses, but we can't share it with you because we're restricted as to how that money gets used. So
Okay,
we can't grant it to the town or the county or whatever for.
Build a sign as you drive into the Holiday did that years ago. They got.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't pay for an IDA in theory to have too much cash sitting around because you can't use it.
It's an attractive business.
You're limited by what you under law, what you can use the money for. And
That's
if you don't
fine.
have that,
that's good.
well, yeah.
You just don't want to fall into that trap, right?
Unless we start paying board members.
You don't get paid?
My wife pays you to get out of the house.
Does anyone else have any other questions or is there any other comments on the audit?
Yep, I have a couple, if I may page
Yeah.
through, and then there's something that I did want to bring, following up on some comments that Dick had made at
Yeah.
an earlier meeting. So I want to go back through.
So there hasn't been a revised one?
No.
Okay, that was my,
We'll get to the MD&A. I had a couple of questions as I just paged through, and I suspect that Georgette has probably already asked them. I'm going to skip the MD&A for the moment. Independent auditors report, no questions. On page 7, I compared the 2021 audit results with 2021 as presented here, and operating expenses, contractual expenses and other revenues are a little bit different, but the net position ends up being the same. And looking at 2021, my conclusion was that there were adjustments made because we are no longer reserving any money for the COVID grant program.
Yes, so the amount seems immaterial. It ended in 21.
Mhm.
We have call it a concurring partner review of the financial statements at our firm. Ken Claflin's being the director of government suggested that, and also that we, because it ended in 21 and the amount was super immaterial, we just kind of took that out altogether.
Okay.
Good catch though.
Yeah, I wish I'd caught it before last night. And
And the same
I
thing
think
with
it's the same thing on
cash
page
flows.
8.
Yeah, same exact thing on cash flows.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that we do want to recognize that if we compare the audit to, as presented here, to the audit in 2021, that's the reason it's a $500 difference in net cash. Okay, on page 11, under fringe benefits, for calendar 2022, we paid 0 fringe benefits, which you correctly reflect here. And what I want to ask is whether this is an appropriate place to note that we paid no fringe benefits or pension contributions because we had no employees.
Yeah, it's, and again, we can add any language you guys want here. These are technically your footnotes. So whatever kind of detail you want to state to the reader as to the reason why, the number 0, for example, we can certainly do that. Because it's like, contractual expenses almost like remain the same this year, but the employee was no longer there, but we also had increased fees for all the projects they had going on, obviously. So, but yeah, we can certainly, add language to that.
Dave, Georgette, what are your thoughts?
And it clarifies, why 1 year you use 0 and the next year you're 12.
It might just be a simple sentence.
Yeah.
2020, the downtown.
Why don't- If you want that, after, for the benefit of agency employees, put parenthetically no employees for 2022.
I mean, you can excuse me?
I was editing.
Yeah.
If you want to add where it says for the benefit of agency employees, then put parenthetically no employees for 2022. I'm just,
Where would you want to put it?
right there, local employees retirement system for the benefit of agency employees. Parenthetically no employees for 2021, 2022. I don't care, I just, if that's what you want, that's what I would probably recommend.
Let's say, just use your language. I don't know that we need the parentheses. You could say
I
there
mean, I
were
think
no
you can simplify it
employees.
by changing 2 words. You could say fringe benefits which are paid to the town in the form of reimbursement if the agency's employees are employees of the town. And since 1 year it's 0, then the assumption is you didn't have any employees. Yeah.
It's fine with me.
That's
I
a-
don't,
That's a change of like 2 words
okay,
Let's,
and the remove over parentheses.
I would recommend taking that
That's
just a
fine.
little bit further, because the if the in that paren is good, but, and then, I'll just give you this. Have it say in 2022, no agency staff or employees of the town.
okay, then
I tend to read financial statements of, and audits of other organizations on a fairly regular basis as a layperson. And so my edit really comes from wanting to be explicitly clear.
Works for me.
On the, compared to the budget, use the term revised budget. I don't know that the budget, it was just a budget. We adopted it in the fall of 21, and I don't think we had any revisions.
We did not, so
Oh,
that,
okay.
It
that
was
can
the
come
year
up.
before we had.
I thought that was original and revised, and then
No,
there's no,
No, it was, this was the,
I don't say final budget,
just origin budget.
Just budget.
just budget.
Yeah.
Yep, that was my note on page 13. Stepping back to page 12, item number 5, uncertainty regarding the COVID emergency.
eliminate that.
Yeah, the COVID emergency, that was something that we ended up taking out and kind of condensing the statement of activities.
Yeah.
On top of that, and the cash flows.
Yeah, so here on page 12, you have under subsequent events, and then you have uncertainty, and it specifically goes to the coronavirus, and that was appropriate for 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, we've been taking that, I think we've actually made the decision to take that out altogether.
I don't
All of our
think it was applicable for
2022 financial statements, so I feel totally comfortable taking that out.
I don't think it was applicable for 2020, but that's not what the Institute said.
Right.
Yeah.
It depends upon your business.
Mhm. Well, we did have projects delayed as a result, and we couldn't meet in person, which was challenging. But my question was, why this emergency and not all of the others? And so we'll just,
Balloons,
there is a long list of emergencies, and
Right.
there's really no limiting principle. The coronavirus was a federal emergency, so it's coming to an end. Okay, so we talked about page 13. And so my next was on the MD&A, and this is something that Dick had raised, which was to add the financial highlights from our operations and accomplishments into financial highlights of the MD&A. And so I circulated via email a couple of pages to Georgette and Kate, and it was, I think, after 5 last night. So if you didn't read it, I fully understand.
Right, those were the numbers that Al had given me for the operations and accomplishments.
Yes. Well, I didn't have those numbers, so I filled them in. So these are the edits and the, provided the rest of the audit committee. following the suggestion to add the financial highlights, which is on the second page. So the net position increased by 810, 820. I say from to, and these numbers correspond to what you're reporting in the net position on page 2 of the MD&A. The revenues and the expenses in my quick writing, I had expenses decreased, 6266, due to engaging executive director and agency counsel through a contract instead of as a municipal employee, because that was the biggest savings in the 22 operations. So that's proposed language for the committee on the financial highlights.
And you say misleading in terms of the pilot?
Yes, so I want to hold on to that thought for a minute. I wanted to add I proposed to add a new section, section B, and that's on the back of the last page. In our operations and accomplishments, we have a list of the projects that generated revenue for the IDA. And it's a major year. So I edited this a little bit to take out the dollars, because those aren't necessarily going to correspond with money in the audit, and I want everything to tie together if we have it in there. But it does give a sense. So it would read, projects, fuel cell manufacturing facility, plug power at Vista, cooperation agreement with Albany County IDA, Albany Port District offshore wind project, Vista Technology, bond fee splitter, Fink Enterprises, refinance, CHPE, economic development cooperation agreement with Albany County IDA, Bert Crane. It's acquisition and construction. It's not just the land acquisition in that project. And it's a new construction equipment facility. So that would be its own management highlight. This was the revenue sources.
That's fine. The only thing, and Kate, should we call it Bert Crane, or should we call it something else?
Yeah, what is it?
Cannon?
Cannon development, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
I think it's important. I agree with you, Victoria. I think it's important to let the parish boast.
Mhm.
Okay? We had a great year. We have a lot of projects, and once they're here, there's no competition. They're already in the ground. But I think it's great.
Good. I'm glad that.
That was what I wanted to do. You did it.
So, Dave, what I propose to delete is the paragraph saying, as reported in the annual report of the town of Bethlehem. We don't have and never have that information. I don't want to reference it in our letter because we have no oversight. We don't know how they calculate that money. We know nothing about it. So that's one. Number two, the Bethlehem School District also is affected by our pilots, and that's not reported at all. So that's unbalanced. We're giving partial information that we haven't reviewed.
Okay.
And I checked a couple of other IDAs, and they don't report this number. The effects of our pilots, we always measure and look for a net tax benefit when we are reviewing and approving a project. That's part of our process. And it's structured into our pilots so that the school district or the town never see their revenue go down below it was previously. Some of the language could be misinterpreted that there's a net loss, and that isn't the case. So that's the final reason. This is difficult language to understand.
Well, that's helpful, because the only thing I highlighted in the audit was that paragraph. And because if it were true, and I guess it's not completely accurate, that's worth highlighting that, just last week, 2 weeks ago, there was a big report that I think the legislature issued, right, saying how IDAs are screwing with people's tax bases and stuff. And if we could show that we in fact are generating more revenue than providing in tax incentives, that's an accomplishment or a highlight or something that we ought to be mentioning. But if it's not true, or we can't prove it's true,
Well, it would end in 23 anyway when PSEG goes away, because the arbitrary or the amount of what they have as their assessed value is the reason why we're collecting
okay,
$1
now,
million more than.
Our projects are, without a doubt in my mind, and I have it, are accretive to the school districts. Okay, we don't add any cost to the school districts. They're a beneficiary of every one of our projects. We have no commercial, we have no residential, we don't add a student, okay? We collect additional school taxes. It's definitely accretive to the school district. I mean, there's no, it doesn't, what it would have been versus what they pay is irrelevant, because what it would have been, okay, is higher than what it was.
Right, that report was produced on a philosophy that without the pilot, you would have more tax revenue.
That's
Right.
right.
And that's not true.
They
That's
did,
not true.
right, if they did the project without, you
Well,
know,
then it's-
the
Yeah.
pilot.
It's,
but if the land stays vacant,
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what, so we are,
Right.
and because we don't do residential, we're everything we do is accretive to the school district.
I mean, think of this, that was a beautiful piece of land.
For the deer.
Sitting there, right where 85 and 443, whatever. And then the board back then and Columbia went on the limb and they put the road in and they got it going. And yeah, the first few years, there were a lot of quote unquote tax breaks, but the property was generating 300, 400, 500,000 more than it was.
Right.
Right,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
school
yeah,
districts were
I-
getting significant revenues without any
Yep.
burden.
Oh, no, I agree. And that's,
Yeah.
I thought, if you, and again, this isn't necessarily a discussion for the audit, but as opposed to the accomplishments, the governance section, whether we mentioned that we're in fact, there's a net increase in tax revenue, even with IDA,
Yeah.
or as a result of IDA projects.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just say the IDA is accretive to the school district.
You have to understand what accretive.
That makes me
What?
think of
You have to
barnacles.
understand what accretive is.
Well, it's not my problem.
Yep. Well, Dave, I read the report rather thoroughly, and I was not fully understanding where they got all of their numbers
Right.
either, the Good Jobs First report. And that raised a lot of questions in my mind, especially with regard to how things are reported in an audit. And that made me more sensitive to the fact that we were presenting information that we couldn't confirm and that was incomplete. And I fully admit, those two are plenty of reasons to take it out. The fact that it could be misconstrued by someone very public was also a little troubling.
Mhm.
So I was glad that we have bona fide reasons to remove it.
Yeah, so the MD&A portion, that's everything that you want to discuss or
Mhm.
describe to the reader. We do not opine on the MD&A, as you know. So really, any changes that you want to make, we'll put
The
in there.
notes were really ours.
We just, we'll obviously make sure that, whatever numbers you're putting in there, if there are any numbers, that they tie to the numbers that are reported on the financial statements, which we do opine on. So that's kind of as far as we go with that.
Well, how do we want to handle the changes to the MD&A document? I've never seen it in Word, so what's the process?
I can certainly send you, it's not in Word document. We use another software that we use for typing, of course, but I can certainly convert it to Word and then you can, make whatever changes you want.
Well,
Or you can, just, if you want, it might be easier to just kind of formulate your
Give
own
you-
Word document.
that, trying to think, is it easier for you? You're going to have to type it into your software regardless.
Yeah, have to, this is all the,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Yeah, page 2 is the other report, and I mark A and B.
Do we have a PDF? I can convert it. And you can mark it up if you'd rather.
Yeah, do you have this in Word? Would you be able to send me this in?
Well, what I'm gonna do
I
is
meant
take the
this report
PDF
here.
and convert it in Adobe Reader, and then you can use it as a Word doc and mark it up.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that too.
Oh, all right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm just trying to, whatever's easier to give it to my office manager.
Well, that is the question. We certainly don't want to put a lot of hair on a simple process. But I think what I recommend for the three of us on the committee, and with Dick as treasurer also, is to see what that looks like amended. And
Yeah, I'll
how
revise
it
the
reads,
draft.
and then,
Yeah, of course.
let the committee decide, yeah, this is the way we want to present it. So whichever makes that easier. And that's all that I had with regard to, very briefly, the discussion that we were just around about how we do measure and report tax benefits. This is something that I propose the Finance Committee looks at this spring to get some formal measurements so that we can have something public that shows the results the way we evaluate them and not just have, net pilot payments show up in the town and the school district. I think we should have a way that we say it, and that Finance Committee, I would recommend, is the place to start.
Here, I'll give you this. Here, Kate,
Yeah, thank you.
for our records.
Thanks.
Oh, that's as long as they approve it. As long as they vote to approve it, you can have that.
Oh, yeah, of course. So, yeah, I guess the next process is, we'll make the changes that we talked about today, and reissue a revised draft, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys would want to see before we actually.
Yeah.
So,
Would we want to have an opportunity to review before we approve? Or do you want to approve it with the suggested edits? Or how does the committee feel about? Because I'm sorry, we're supposed to be approving this next week at the board, right? Board meeting. So how comfortable, there's a lot of edits we've asked for, so I don't know if you feel comfortable approving it and moving it to the board with suggested edits, or if we want to see it one more time. I know we can do electronic voting as long as every member votes. Does the IDA allow to vote electronically?
Bid, you mean?
Yeah,
No.
I think,
we're not allowed.
Georgette, I think,
Yeah.
if I may,
Sure.
I think you can approve the audit and then subsequently approve the MDNA. Okay, because my representation, I think, is on the audit, not on the MDNA.
correct.
So the only edit for the audit really is
It's
footnote,
yeah, a couple of footnote things and obviously.
eliminating the
Yeah,
footnote on
more.
Okay.
and a word on no employees. I mean, it's.
When's the board meeting? Is it?
Next Wednesday.
Yeah, it's
Next
Wednesday,
Friday, next Wednesday.
it's Wednesday, the
Oh, next Wednesday?
22nd.
Yeah.
I'll get you, I'll have revised drafts to you by tomorrow. So.
No, that's helpful, Dick. I appreciate that clarification. So I think we are in agreement that the numbers and the notes, pending the one edit, that we talked about with the no employees matches. So I'll call for a motion to approve the draft audited financial statements with the revise. With the
So
revision.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is there anything else for discussion? Any old business, anything? I don't think we need executive session. So seeing no other business, I'll call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Before we adjourn,
Motion.
and this, you're the chair of the audit, would you consider having a 15-minute audit committee meeting next
Just
Wednesday
quickly
at
review.
8 to bring the MD&A
Sure.
and have the board start at 8:15?
Just to review it before we go.
Well, if the draft gets circulated tomorrow, I think you can just reach out, we read it and we see, I'm fine with the changes, and we can have sort of informal agreement that it's fine, and then just present it to the full board.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
On Wednesday.
All right.
That sounds good to me.
And this, I don't
I
want
don't,
to delay everybody's day. Usually, in the past, they've always had a little session with the auditor without any staff around in case there's any what are issues. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there aren't any. But
There's no, yeah, there's
Yeah.
I don't- yeah, well, Tom and I would leave the room, and then you and Frank and everybody would just, so I don't know if you need to do that procedurally, or if you could just say, there's nothing going
I
on.
think we've only, like, for boards I've been on, it's only been if there were concerns. So
Yeah.
I've been in a situation where we've had to ask staff to leave, but I think that's at the request of the committee members, and I don't think we.
Yeah.
Actually, we just wanted to talk about Tom.
Yeah.
I was wrong about me.
Yeah, our conversations were pretty quick. We let them back in the door,
Yeah.
usually after 30 seconds or so. So, yeah, no, obviously no issues. So.
Okay, so we'll, over the next couple of days, we'll take an opportunity to review what you sent to us and get that in a final version
And
to
then
bring
we'll
to the
email
board.
back to KDU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That
Or
sounds good.
suggested changes or whatever.
So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Now that we're adjourned, can I ask a quick question of everybody? We have 4 new board members, Victor and